Hey there. Welcome to the family card table. We're so happy to be back, keeping our rhythm. I think this is our fourth or fifth week, maybe fourth. And today it's just me and Rob. And the thing about the family card table that I wanted to bring through is your kitchen tables like this too. Whoever's in the kitchen, whoever's sitting, whoever's there to chat, like those are the opportunities sometimes to learn more about why we're here, who we are. So in this time with Rob, who I always enjoy a good conversation with Rob, like his heart and mind connect in such a way, and he goes so deep by nature. So for me, he's a familiar because I really appreciate somebody who can go to the deep waters and come up with some clarity and put it together with something else. So that's what happens. So we invite you to listen in for myself and Rob today, and that's what will be on the show. We'll persist with our regular things, like the topic of what happened for you all in regards to the full moon and the changes that we're in and what you're noticing. And even if you make your conversation with your family about what you're noticing, that's the beginning of sharing perspective, sharing awareness. So, Rob, I'm happy to meet with you and hear what you've been noticing. Welcome. Hi.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's fun to, been really enjoying our weekly podcast here, and yeah, it's fun every week, different sort of conversations, and see what comes up. So we'll just see where the conversation goes here today.
What do you find in your awareness of the things that you think you want to bring into our conversation today?
Yeah, I mean, I think you already mentioned the full moon, and that was this past weekend, almost a week ago. I think that's definitely something we should talk about. And then, it sounds like part of the plan is to talk about the cards and astrology, and what are these things, how are they helpful, how are they useful, how do we use them, and that sort of thing. So
Nice. How
yeah.
do we use them, right? I mean, I remember being a young girl and in the back of the newspaper being three or four lines about your astrology, your cancer, whatever. I didn't even know there was a moon or a rising, right? And like seeing if my day would be like what it said and if I really was like it. And then I remember getting those books, like big fat books on astrology. And of course, the first thing you went to was like, if I'm with this person and they're this way and I'm that way, what would happen? Like, would we be a good relationship? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's like the way I remember astrology coming into my life was like, what does it mean about how I'm going to relate to everything?
Yeah.
Right? Because I hated some of the stuff I heard about cancers at first, like possessive. I was like, oh, I'm not possessive. I'm not possessive. Oh, God. You know, and sometimes I'm possessive, and somebody will pick up something of mine and I'll like get a twitch inside me. I'm like, oh my gosh, calm down. Like, what are you doing? Like, who cares? It's just a hat, but it's my hat. It's like, all right. So loyal. Loyal was another one that I really I took like I'm loyal. And now I'm like, oh my God, loyal really cut into my authenticity, man. Like I did not know how to do loyal and authentic at the same time. Like I lost some
Right.
clarity in that game. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And then I can't wait to hear how you interpreted Scorpio when you first heard it. I'm passing this back.
Yeah.
So
That's
and
right.
then the other one was tenacious. I was
Mm,
told I was tenacious, and there's no lie in that. Like I'm a
right.
badger. I will not stop. I do not give up. Like it's
Yeah.
crazy. I even if I want to, sometimes I can't. Like it's so
Yeah.
innate to my character. And then I find out I'm a king of diamonds, and then you're like, well, geez, that's kind of the way it would be, no? And you have two cardinal signs, an Aries and a Cancer. Like these different things that they start to make sense to the way your soul is living in this energy body, right? Because I
Yeah.
love people remind us we are not humans, we're spirits having a human experience. And each one of us wears what we wear and is who we are, but our souls are the things that connect to the stars. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. And
Tell us how they connect, Rob. Tell me more.
yeah. Yeah. Well, good question. I mean, and I always preface these conversations, astrology and the cards, and that there's many perspectives, there's many views of what they mean, and many ways of describing them, and in the astrology world, someone asked, I think it was Stephen Forrest, or maybe he told the story of someone asking someone else, but the story came through him, and they said, what's the best astrology out there? Like, is it Vedic astrology, Western astrology, evolutionary astrology? There's all these different astrologies and different systems. And, he said something like, what's the best language out there? Is it English? Is it German? Is it French? They're all languages. They're all useful for describing the world and all that. So that's the way I see cardology, astrology, all these different things. They're a language for understanding life. And so, my perspective is, I'm a hypnotist. I do past life regression. I do all these sort of weird woo-woo things with regards to that. But it's given me a unique, well, maybe not unique, but a perspective of this multi-life journey from the perspective I take that we're on. And the perspective that I have is, and that many have, is that as a soul, we choose to incarnate, and that there's no mix up, there's no mistakes. That moment of your birth, the day of your birth, all those things, it's as if as a soul you chose to incarnate at that time, because it's the perfect time to learn and grow through the curriculum that you have, through remembering who and what you truly are, which is consciousness itself, being a soul, connection to all that is source, and all the rest. I
think when you say that, as a mother, both of the, especially actually the first three, I knew the day before they were coming. Like I mean, I had a sense already when they were coming, because they give you a due date and this and that. But like, I literally knew, like, and both of them, like, I said in the morning, okay, today's the day. And they're all just like, Madeline, what are you talking about? Like, you're not even this. I'm like, today's the day. Yeah. And I would know, because that's the way my character grows, very innately intuitive. And they could talk to me. They were inside of me, so I was forever connected to them, so, and it happened every time, just about. And it's an interesting thing, because it's as if we can sense what's coming when we're tuned into it. And therefore we have to let it happen in its own divine time and bloom right on time. Like, divine timing is like the safest way to let go, right? Because then you can really trust that it's happening the way it needs to happen, right? But I don't want to let you out of the question of what was it like when you learned about your Scorpio self.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And and I'm sort of coming to that, in that, the perspective I take is that the sun sign, you're a Cancer sun, I'm a Scorpio sun, and that sun sign doesn't describe who you are naturally. It's, again, this is from the perspective that I take from evolutionary astrology. The sun sign is like the soul's intention for your human evolution. It's as if you're at a point in your life journey where, for me, the sun in Scorpio, for you, the sun in Cancer, by house, by placement, by aspect, speaks to the soul's intention for this next step in your evolutionary journey. And that's typically not how it's described. You in the newspaper and the thing, you read the sign of Cancer, the forecasts, all that stuff. Like, and so,
well, let's break that down, because it is a very different way that you would say it, right? Yeah. Because basically you're saying that the soul has a neutrality to it, and that this sun imprint kind of shapes its experience. Is that what you're saying?
The perspective, from my perspective, I see the planets not as these all-powerful beings that are impressing and forcing energies on this world and things like that. That's not the perspective I take. The perspective I take is that the planets, much like we look at a clock, and I think there's a clock behind, like there's a clock. Just like at a clock, we look at the clock, it tells us what time it is, If it's noon, we know like, hey, the sun is likely, it's shining, it's likely warmer out, it's time for lunch or whatever. We look at a clock. The clock isn't enforcing that on the world. It's just letting us know. It's letting us know, hey, oh, it's 10 p.m. time for bed, or whatever. Now, astrology, looking at the planets and the locations they are in the sky, to me is something very similar. It's letting us know what natural energies are occurring here in this world, and this planet. And not that these planets are necessarily enforcing those energies on the world. It's more of a archetypal clock through which we can see, as above, so below. It's archetypal meanings that are pervasive above and below, and here and now. So the sun that you're born in, the sun sign, also the house of the sun, equally important as the sign of the sun and everything else. But it's as if that's the soul's intention for this human evolution. And so for me, the sun in Scorpio, this is a lifetime where there's this sort of soul intention of exploring and healing and going deep into deeper feelings, deeper wounds, deeper truths, deeper going beneath the surface. What's really, having that emotional, courageous, emotional investigation into what's really true for me in this moment, that sort of thing. So now, I also don't. I just you said something. I just want to clarify again from this perspective, is that we don't come in here as blank slates. We
Oh,
also have
good.
we
That
also
is
have past lifetimes. And from my perspective, and of course, time can be seen as simultaneous and all that stuff. But basically, your chart speaks to how you're naturally wired, and it's not the sun necessarily. The sun might be related in there, but other aspects of your chart speak to how you might be conditioned. We're all sort of, some people like sunsets, some people like sunrises. We're all sort of have these conditionings and attachments and mode of operations that we've sort of been accustomed to. So yeah, I just wanted to speak to that. But that isn't necessarily the sun. The sun is more of like, what's part of this curriculum that you're choosing to bring light to in this lifetime? And it's similar to, like, the sun is also in place where it's a challenge. In that, like, if you're a Spanish 3 speaker, Groweesha, you're not going to take a Spanish 1 class. There's nothing for you to learn in Spanish 1. It's, and the sun is like that next class. It's something that is really important in this evolutionary journey of the soul. So that's the perspective that I take with the evolutionary astrology anyways.
So then I'm hearing you say that our soul has a story or experiences that come with it prior, and that when we are born, we're affected not only by our sun, by our full placement. And in that full placement, there's information about your tendencies and the ways that you might create your reality.
That's right. In other words, you are who you are before you were born, so to speak, but you chose when you're born because it's the perfect time that sort of speaks to the mythology of the past. It speaks to the healing of the future. And it's a really magical, amazing thing when you look at whether it's astrology or the cards or anything. It's really an incredible system that really points not only to some of our challenges and hurts and wounds and things like that, but also how to move through them. And that's what the language of astrology, the language of cardology is. They're languages that are can be used to not only identify some of the challenges, but also the ways forward. And I also want to say that the perspective I take is from the concept of past lifetimes, that things happen to us, and then we oftentimes make a self-concept around those things. So trauma happens, and then we interpret some sort of self-concept, some sort of interpretation from there. And we're being asked to let go of those interpretations. In other words, like, take, for example, the wounded puppy that's abandoned and betrayed on the side of the road. And I'm sure everyone's seen YouTube videos with these beautiful puppies that have been through some real trauma. But those little puppies in their puppy brain might be thinking, I'm unlovable. Because if I was lovable, there might be someone that is giving me food or is kind and bringing me in. But it hasn't experienced that at this point in its journey. But of course, as a human, we see that puppy and we're like, no, that's an innocent little puppy dog. The puppy's rescued, hopefully. And then that puppy relearns, yeah, I'm lovable, loved, and loving. And that in that puppy brain, reminding itself, clearing itself from any interpretations that were made at that time where that trauma was occurring, but because of course it didn't have anything to do with that puppy, innocent little puppy dog. So in a way, that's a simplified version of that healing type of thing. But to me, that's how I see the astrology, in that we all have wounded puppies in our psyche, and astrology and the cardology can help suggest where that might have occurred for self-awareness, and to really clear out some of those self-concepts that we might have attached to at that moment of in those difficult times. So
my dog's crying just thinking about being a wounded.
That's
the dog wants me to get up and go take him in the house, and I'm like,
right.
being neglected again. And then there's the way that, because she's crying, it means something about me, right? There's that way.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I know.
That's the whole dynamic.
We're meaning makers. That's the thing. We live in an archetypal world, and the world we see isn't the world we see is in the Course in Miracles. It talks about the world we see is not the world that God created. We're seeing it through our labels, our identification,
our lens,
our interpretations, and so that's a perfect example of, like, we're always making it about self, and that, I think, is a lot of where our suffering comes from.
Because we're all in narcissism, because we're all still fully evolving out of the adolescent of our species, right? Like we're all maturing as a species, right, into a higher consciousness, where, to me, judgment is like a luxury of avoidance. Like, what do we do in judging stuff? Like, you can discern where your line is and how you want to regulate yourself, but you're not here to judge it. Do you know what I mean? Like, but for some reason, that self-infliction created a lot of judgment, and then whatever we do on the inside comes out, right?
Right.
But you keep bringing up in my heart Carolyn Myss. That's a woman who I've appreciated for many, many decades, and she has some stuff coming out now about a lot of things, and she's come to so much clarity. She's gotten older, but she really got into archetypes. And boy, when you listen to any of her recordings, and I don't know if we'll link one here or if you just find her on YouTube, but she has all the archetypes done and she talks about them. If you identify with one of those, it's such a great classroom of information to get a sense of, like, oh, whoa, I'm like really wearing the suit, because when I looked at like the martyr mother one, geez, I was just like, boy, why don't I just check the boxes? Do you know what I mean? And internally, I don't feel like a martyr or a mother. I feel like a strong tree wanting to make a difference in the world. But that archetype, that energy, that role I was playing informed my behavior loudly.
Right.
And then it was in the chart. And then Rob explained even more to me about the way I'm very sensitive to other people's shaming and judging of myself, because I want so much to be somebody who, uses herself well and is of integrity and such. And I don't like to hurt people. But sometimes being truthful does hurt people.
Yeah. Yep. That's always, it's a tricky one. And,
I guess come from care and concern. That's what the girls would say that I work with. Like, say it kindly and nicely. Like, because I would say that one of the challenges is, for my own character, not wanting to hurt people, I'm already feeling awkward even saying what I'm going to say, because I know it's going to hurt the person and I don't want to hurt them, but I'm not saying it to hurt them. So you got to say it nicely enough that it doesn't hurt them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
sometimes you find the firmness is the only thing people hear, but firmness sometimes stings. Like I've watched people's physical bodies go like this when I just like say, he said no.
Right.
It's like, oh, and I'm like, well,
Yeah.
it was obvious that the person said no, and you decided to push the line. So I'm going to let you know that was a no, and you didn't hear it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And it's like, as humans, we condense everything into language, into words, where like we conceptualize no, and you hear no, and it's like,
It's like rejection.
right. And when in reality, life is far more nuanced. It's far more complex. It's, you know what I mean? It's like the old classic thing of, I think it was Krishnamurti. It said, you teach the child the name of a blue jay, and that child no longer sees the blue jay. It sees a concept that, oh, I know what that is. It's the blue jay, as if the word blue jay encompassed the entire reality of a blue jay. The actual, its behaviors, its the beauty, the subtlety, all the infinite world of blue jay. And with words, we sort of condense a reality into words, and that's why words have this such power, because we're creating our own worlds from these conceptual words of no. And when someone says no, the more true thing oftentimes is, I love you and no, or I love you and that's not right for me right now in this moment where I'm at here. So and so, I mean, sometimes using, that, giving words a bit more contextuality can be helpful, and that's where the communication comes in. But it's amazing how we live and die by words, and the words are never enough to describe full reality.
There's another guy, Father Anthony DeMillo. He just
big DeMillo. Yeah,
I have listened to that, I tell you, 20 times. Like
Anthony DeMillo. Yeah.
Anthony DeMillo, if I'm doing anything in the name of your work, I'm honored. Like your clarity and your discernment and your playfulness and the way you brought it to people, he brings in those same concepts. Like if somebody never saw green and then you describe green and then people fight over what they think green is.
Yeah.
Like, no, green's this, no, green's that. It's like, green is whatever you experience, and that's okay. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes there's no words for it. I'm finding in my verbal processing habit of trying to, like, I get to have my feelings, so I'm going to talk about them, yada, yada, I've lost some of the clarity and the depth of my sensations because words sometimes they take away from it.
Yeah.
It's hard to even articulate the depth of what you can experience. I sometimes find that a look or a touch or just my hand to my heart is a more sincere response than anything I could say.
Yeah.
Right? Because once I say something, it's going to take away the feeling.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm just learning. This is what my last Saturn return really taught me, is how many of my feelings have been dulled by my trying to explain feelings.
Right. And it's so funny how we're all hooked into, when they understand my feelings, then I'll be able to more fully hold them.
Oh my God, I said that so many times in my life, like, yeah, I want you to understand me. Do you really understand me? And it's like, what am I talking about? Like, I mean, indignant. Like, I want you to, do you really understand? Like, what? Like, it's like, you want me to have your poop? Like, you pooped. Okay, I get it. And it's just like, do you know what I went through to have that poop? It's like, you pooped. You know what I mean? Like,
totally.
I mean, I know it's, I don't mean to be crude, but I mean to be basic, that it's like, it's my own creation and I need to make peace with it and I need to stand in it and light it and be it. And whether you get it or not should not change whether I do this or not.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if it does change, then we're not okay. That's the toxic family, as far as I'm concerned. The one that everybody likes to joke and bond about, that's the one that does that.
Yep.
They don't stand in their own righteousness and clarity. They stand in like bends and arrows and question marks, whether or not somebody likes them. And like, you don't see any trees standing like that.
Right. That's right.
Unless they're in a storm and they fall over and then someone told them. But most of the trees do their best to keep themselves steady in their own spot.
That's right.
And use what they got, but there's a personality piece and a desire to connect. It's interesting. That's where I hope that the seed metaphor that we've used in the website and the astrology and the cards gives people something to connect to that allows you to understand how it's happening from the inside out. And it's somewhat of a natural design that we're waking up to find what we create in the golden age as our consciousness rises. Yeah. And we all come together with this shared genius. So that's what's actually happening. And that's what we're connected to. There's a wholeness to our inner selves and our outer selves. But as long as we're fragmented in these concepts, it's really hard to taste it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and beautifully said. And just a quick side note regarding the website. And for those interested, there is a free, I guess, intro package. I guess I forgot exactly what we're calling it. We're calling the seedling package. And for those interested, you can get free information on your birth card and a free preview of a report and things like that. So for those interested, sign up on our subscribers as a subscriber on our website. And we also offer 4 packages in total. The free one is the first one. And then there's 3 others of more dynamic information regarding that are personalized to you, with some other cool things like guided meditations by Groweesha and myself, and what is there? There's all sorts of things. I think we should talk some about this because
talk about that. I would love to, because this is our promotion for what's growing underneath, right? Because as Rob said, he wants to get to the depth of what's going on and help, and my astrology in line. Like, we were meant to meet each other, right? This was no accident that Rob and I are sitting here right now, right? So we are aware of that. So we brought together, and then who knew how much of a genius Donna and Gina were and what they were bringing, but universe conspired. My intuition was the lead, but everybody came together with these concepts, and we're growing it like you're a seed of possibilities, like a seed of what you were kind of, brought into the energies of. And then from that seed, you get information. And then as that sapling, you learn more about how you're going to interact with your environment. And then as that adult tree, you're in relationships and you're accountable and responsible, and you got to make peace with what your part is. And then as an ancient tree, you're learning how to use this with your family. Right? Because that's the whole thing, is what can we use to get over ourselves? Because I've listened to people talk about themselves, and God knows I've talked about my own self forever. And it's like, it only gets you so far, so it's not really where it's at. It's really more like, what's the alchemy? What's the third energy? Like, I can't wait to see what the family card table's mission fully is, because I more just said yes to what I know I need to do to share more about what I understand. Somebody gave me such a kind reflection today and said that when I walk into a room, I walk into the room like I'm the smartest person there. And I thought at first, I was like, oh, that's so cocky. It's obnoxious. I had my own little self-judgment for a second. And then I said, well, I do feel like that. But the reason I feel like that is because of my relationship to nature and the elements and the way I've been with people. Like, I don't know that I feel smart about you, but I know her. Yeah. Like, I know I can handle whatever's going to happen.
Right.
And to me, if I can inspire that in more people, heck, that's a good day in the woods, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I got me. I'm not going to ask you to carry me. I'm not going to make you responsible for my feelings. I'm not going to put you down because I feel insecure. All things I did before, but I matured.
Right. Yeah. But they say self-knowledge is king, or there's some saying.
Yeah. Know thyself.
Know thyself. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like the Greek Delphi. And the thing is, because yourself is an experience of these energies and how you respond. I remember watching the twins, because I was such a different level of consciousness when I mothered them. And I remember watching them literally kind of choose who they were going to take stuff from, try on voices, interact certain ways. Their environment was reflecting them, and they were consciously or unconsciously choosing which ones they felt comfortable with. And then when I learned them now in their astrology, again, I was like, boy, look at how the Gemini one went so much like the Gemini, and the Cancer one went so much like the Cancer rising. You know, they have two different risings, and just the little variations there were in them. But I noticed and wrote in my journal at the time, golly, it's like we just get to pick from what's around us what we're going to grow until we know more about who we really are. We just kind of imitate like monkeys.
Yeah. Yeah. Reminds me of another
Self-awareness.
quote by the singer. He
You're breaking up.
and yeah, sorry. Something like, and maybe I shared this before with the show, but it's a good one. It goes something like, aging is a remarkable process whereby you become the person you were always meant to be. And I think there's a lot of truth with that. You know, as a younger person, we're worrying too much about the other. Um, it speaks to a lot of the a lot of what that aging and wisdom
Yeah.
seems
And
to bring.
I also think as parents, we can start to do that to our children, right? We can start to reflect to them their possibilities, but without pressure. Do you know what I mean? Like, my mom's favorite phrase was that she thought of me the president of the United States, right? So like she would say that and I would laugh at her and stuff like that. But it did mean that I was going to be more than I thought I could be, right? And over my lifetime, even astrologers like Rob and stuff have said things to me about my placements in my chart that gave me permission to expand more fully into this one because there was a purpose and a meaning for me. And that some of the kind of intuitive psychic things about me were part of my design. And though I might have found them awkward or even afraid to express them at times, they're actually part of what's going to help me integrate the information and share from a place that's wise. So, other people's reflections of you, when we can, we want to offer the most like expanded possibility. Like, don't put people in confined states just because you're in one. Like, you don't have to shrink somebody because you're shrinking. You know what I mean? Because you're really affecting yourself more than you realize in those projections. Because a lot of what happens in families from my long running time sitting with them, it's shared projections. And they're like forms of protection from actually growing in fluid water as opposed to stagnant water. It's like commitments and even loyalty to staying stuck in a concept that isn't your full truth.
Right.
And that'd be a bummer, right? We wouldn't want to do that to these little ones or even ourselves. Like, who wants to be half mass? Like, if you're going to be here, rock it.
Yeah.
Like, we're here. We're here in 2024. We're here for these changes. Like, show up at the table, man.
Right. Yeah. Well said. Well said.
So I have a fun table story to let our. So I like to play cards a lot. Like even before I learned about cards, I love cards. We always play cards. And in my family, the card game, just like family game night, can get intense, right? Because who's going to win and who's got this and that and all the pressure to this and that. And I would buy right in. I'd bet in the game, you know, my parts play that part too. And it would take away from the kind of closeness that I wanted to feel with my family. And that was one of the things we did. So at first we called it mom's cards, and then it was like vulnerability cards. But anyways, the way we play cards is we love the game May I. It's like a rummy base. And when you get an extra card, you usually have to pay to the pot. And then like whoever wins gets the pot, right? So there's no dollars, there's no quarters, it's questions. So when it's time to pull your card and you say May I to someone who you got a turn to get the card that you need for your hand, you're asked a question. And I just really want to put it out there as a fun way to play, even in your kitchen table. Like, have a box of questions that everybody's curious about from each other and pull out a question. You know, maybe we'll put up on our free things just some questions because they give me a really good one the other day. They asked me what my thoughts were about death. And usually I'm making the question, so I have some answers already prepared. I was like, oh man, what are my thoughts about death? And my reflection was that in death, everything is there. Like nothing goes away. It's just different. And that's the same thing that happens with life. Nothing's actually leaves. We're just not there anymore. We're here. And that's like, so we don't die per se. We recycle, if you will. And that's why I love this evolutionary piece that Rob brings in, because it's like affirmation to this sensation that I always feel that it's like, we're always still going to be connected somehow. I may not be wearing this character, but I'm still going to experience something of the wholeness that I know I'm part of. And I haven't found the people or the things that died to go away, because they stay alive in your heart. They stay alive in who you became. They stay alive in everything. Like last year's garden is still in my heart, even though this year's garden is off the charts. It's like they're all great. So, but yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to consider your archetype, because that's definitely like the frame of why you are who you are and what you're doing, what you're wearing. And I think it's important to recognize that as you learn your card, you might find the tendency for certain cards to be certain archetypes. Do you know what I mean by that, Rob?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Rob, what made you go from the cards to astrology, or astrology to the cards? Like, how did that marriage or understanding happen for you?
Yeah, I mean, astrology came around first, but in 2019, a good friend of mine introduced me to the cards, and initially I was just like, "What the heck is this thing?" I mean, I really, it's funny because we laugh about it now, but I sort of, I didn't take it very seriously, and then, boy, oh boy, did it change. Start looking into it, and it's unbelievable. It's really, it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. It really, it's to the point now where, obviously I'm an astrologer, an evolutionary astrologer, and I use cardology in every session in terms of course, a person's birth card, but I think and at some point we'll be talking about this in the shows, of looking at the time series of the cardology for one's year, for one's week or month or whatever it is. Cardology speaks to a lot of the energies we're going to move through, and it doesn't speak to what's going to happen in life. It speaks more to the types of questions you might have to navigate. So to me, it's a really helpful way to practice self-inquiry, practice self-awareness, practice all those intangibles that I think are, part of what this existence is all about. So yeah, cardology is just a tremendous tool that everyone can benefit from, whether it's understanding the family dynamics, family systems, your own life, what's ahead, these types of things, and understanding the past. It's just really, it's fascinating and beautiful.
Yeah. I'd be curious to ask the listeners, and these many things you go back to, whatever, what would you want to know? Right? Because I remember how weird this stuff was when I first came into it, and how it kind of almost annoyed my brain. Like, it was like, almost like, I should have already known this. If it was real, I would have known it. Like, I don't need to know that, right? But the more I listened and learned how much it was articulating me, and I could see it in my family and see the patterns, I was like, wait a minute, something's really going on. And because I've sat with thousands of people, I'm like, geez, if that person wasn't a jack of clubs, or geez, was that not a two of diamonds move right there, man? So like, and it just depersonalizes things so much, because it really had nothing to do with me. Right? We had a alchemically, like we had a chemical thing, like their card and my card had some type of placement maybe, but that was for us. I have to let Wolfie in. I'm going to go get the cards. I wonder what we could pull. Maybe we could pull people astrology, and cards, and like a card for each one of those, and see what the information might say? What do you think? Think about it. I'm gonna turn off my and pass it to you while I go and let the dog in and get the cards.
All right. Yeah. Cool. Cool. Yeah. Well, gosh, what do we talk about? I guess I would say that, for everyone, obviously everyone knows your sun sign, whether it's Aries, Taurus, Gemini, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the real key and important thing to know is that while that may or may not describe your natural essence, to me, I use the ascendant to describe your natural essence, your south node of the moon to describe these sort of more self-describing characteristics. But the sun, you can look at that as a guiding star, a guiding light, something to, it's like, it's an elective thing that you've chosen. There's no way around it. Your life will likely revolve around learning and growing and embracing that type of energy. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I think people make, is that, take, for example, an Aries sun. Aries are learning to be courageous, bold, direct. It doesn't mean they naturally are. I know many Aries where they're completely opposite to what one would describe as an Aries, the fiery, assertive type. No, many Aries are just the opposite, because they're learning to embrace those qualities that exist naturally within them, but to shine a light and bring that to the surface. So I think it's important to know that when you look at your sun sign, it's not a natural, it's not defining who you are. It's more of like, hey, this is something to shine a light on in your life. So that's everyone's homework, I guess I'd say this week, is at least one of them is to look at your sun sign and really see, what is it that you're meant to really dive into, to embrace? What's that guiding star saying?
That's awesome, Rob. I really like that, because that kind of speaks to that you have things to grow and develop while you're here.
Yeah.
And so learning to balance my possessiveness, my tenacity, and my loyalty, and turning my loyalty onto me, right? Because Cancer's ability to be loyal to themselves and to be a cardinal sign and to regulate their emotions, it's no easy trick.
Yeah, no doubt.
Water sign, and if I got my Aries coming in with my moon, right?
That's the thing. And the real beauty of astrology is not just the sun sign, it's the whole kit caboodle, so having a sun in Cancer, the moon in Aries, there's a lot of conflict, resolution, and bringing
inside
that bravery
inside of me, right? My Cancer and Aries energy have to, the fire and water have to alchemize to bring a balance. Like Carolyn Miss again, she speaks of our responsibility to be balanced ourselves. Balance doesn't come from outside of there. Balance comes from the inside. So are you in balance? Are you taking your classes? Because you're getting classes.
That's right.
Nobody's not in the class. I'm positive.
The way I love seeing those types of, that tension, it's sort of like, you put a rock in a rock tumbler, and it's like through the friction, pressure, and all the rest, like out comes a polished gemstone. But without the friction, without the pressure, the tension, it's not, you're not going to polish. And so I think it'd be helpful to see life in that way of like, okay, we're getting polished right now.
So that makes me think it might be fun to pull cards on nature astrology in the cards, right? Because it's our nature that we're trying to develop, right? We're the people who are of the earth. The word human means of the elements of the earth, right? So we're connected in that way. So I think of it like that. That's an interesting
game for whatever. Yeah.
So when I first started playing with the cards, I went to the store in Port Jervis, and it said, "She is magic playing cards." And they were like this kind of thing, this like old box now. And then on the front of them, oops, see, this thing goes backwards. They have all these like funky symbols. So they're the ones that I use when I'm like, what do the cards say? Like, they're not necessarily cards I play with. They're cards that I pull with because they said they're magic. So I believe in magic, what the heck, you might as well. So I wonder, there was something else you said I wanted to touch on before the cards. I could be fully focused in them. I really appreciate the understanding that your sun sign is a classroom of what you can grow. I kind of feel like that's true of the cards too. Like, they inspire more and they take us out of the concepts and the third dimensional density into a higher frequency of multidimensional clarity.
Absolutely. And that's the way I see the cards too, is that while the cards do describe how you are, but they also describe what you're here to learn about, that classroom. So, yeah.
All right, here we go. So I'm asking these magical cards to inform us to end our lives on 3 cards, and we're going to pull astrology and the information of astrology for our evolution as a humanity. And we're going to pull one for the cards themselves and what they want to bring to the conversation, and one for the human experience, that of our divine nature. And I call on my guides and angels and the wisdom that wants us to grow to show me the cards that will give us the information. Okay, oops, they're popping out. So the astrology came out as the 7 of clubs. All right, and I'm going to pull the others. The cards come out. I'll do it like this. As a 7 of hearts. And now our human experience, that's so fascinating, us in 7s. I tell you, that's the road to heaven. When you can make peace with what's beneath and align it to something you believe, you grow the bridge to the next level of your possibilities. So I love that they're 7s. Let's see what it is that we bring in our human experience. Jack of Hearts. That's pretty cool. That's very cool. I guess for me, the astrology is like around learning to speak the reality of who you are and not shaming or blaming what you are, right? When you learn about your chart and the way you came in, the way I did with Rob and others, I just couldn't even think about thinking that I was doing it wrong anymore. If anything, I felt more accountable to the responsibility of what I say. But what do you think, the 7 of clubs in astrology? What comes up for you, Rob?
And so in the way that you did that, it just for clarification, it's like the 7 of clubs represents, what sort of theme related to astrology might that relate to? Is that correct? Or
yeah, I think what I was pulling was the relationship between the cards, astrology, and people. Right? So like, just like when we pulled the family and we talked about the dynamics of it, how would the dynamics work, right? So if the cards are a 7 of hearts and astrology is a 7 of clubs, they already have common ways that they are working together, right? They're already similar, but one has a little bit maybe more of a mental, and the other might have more of a thing about who you are emotionally and how you show up emotionally, you know what I mean? Whereas the mental part of the astrology is so much more like the understanding, the bigger understanding, and going higher with the understanding.
Yeah. Well, interesting. I mean, with the 7s, they're the card that's right in the middle of any suit. The king to the 2, the 7's right there in the middle. And it represents a fulcrum, that you can balance something when it's right in the middle there. And with the 7 of clubs, to me, when I see that energy show up, there's something, it's sort of like who has a better plan, you or God? You know what I mean? Like, uh, to see the big picture, to let go of any limiting thinking patterns, um, to really find a different way forward. And the sevens in cardology are associated with sort of a taking the spiritual path, taking the middle road, and to not be too, in a teeter-totter, you can be on one side, you can be on the ground, the other side might be up in the air. It's, there's something about the beauty of balance and embracing balance. And in clubs, to me, there is something, like you said, that intellect and with the mind, and the mind obviously can be just like a knife can cut, but it can also help heal, surgery and things like that. So what do you want your mind to be used for? To contribute to your suffering, which I think is where we're at in humanity, but the mind can also be used to help heal. So yeah.
Put it in perspective, because that's what healing is. Even when you go to those deep trauma wounds in the past life or otherwise, it's like, what did you decide there, and is it true? Right? Because it's the perspective that liberates you sometimes, because it's that lens and that lock that we might create, right? So I love what you said. How does God have a better plan or me? Do you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. Like, is there a wiser thing? And so to me, there's a surrender when you learn the vastness and the wisdom of astrology or the cards to be like, oh, okay, so we're not really as in charge as we thought. Like, we are in charge, but like we're on a mission.
That's right.
And it's a shared mission for sure. And well, I did the composite, but I think we should continue with the other cards. I'll tell you the composite after we talk. So let's see, what would we say the seven hearts would want to bring to the cards? Like, to me, I always think of the seven hearts as somebody who really needs to learn how to, Dharma would say, stay in your square, keep boundaries, like say who you are and stay true, because there's a depth and a clarity to that bridge, because they've matured out of the six. They've come into a sense of themselves, but they have to maintain that sense of self enough to stay authentic, but still in the heart and not resentful and things like that.
Yeah. The seven of hearts archetypally is, it's all about relationships and that sort of energy of allowing other people to be the way they are. So, and thereby allowing yourself to be the way you are, that sort of taking that middle road, and the importance of seeing the big picture to get the mind out of the way again. But it's that sort of spiritual love type of thing.
Imagine everyone loving each other like that, like to love each other the way that the seven of hearts can love each other. Because like, if we are a human family and nobody's trying to hurt you, and it's nobody's a bad guy and a good guy, that we're all just in this process together, and you just love the people because you love the people, and you're just proud of them for showing up today and smiling and being who they are. There's a real freedom in that.
That's right. That's right. And when we see the opportunities to forgive others as opportunities to forgive ourselves, there's a lot of fruit in those exchanges with other people. Yeah.
And then the fun one I think is so great. The Jack of Hearts is the humans, the us, and that's the Christ consciousness. I mean, I'm exposed to everything because I like to listen to stuff. So there's another show I've been watching, The Chosen, which is a story of the Bible. And they're really doing a beautiful job in recording the experiences in a way that's very palpable, because they really show the relationships between the disciples and him. And you get the message more and more that his reason for being was to not split us, to recognize that everything has the value and everything is that of God, and that some of the religions and the righteousness or the indulgence that was coming at his time had lost sight of that, and they were holding the rules more sacred than the Christ, the divinity in Rob, like the divinity in everyone that I meet. and how my ability to be fully present and open in my heart is going to make me sweeter and more alive inside. Right.
Yeah.
So that grace consciousness, again, we can over sacrifice ourselves for the idea of another. And that's a distortion in our archetype usually. Right. Because no one's asking you to do that. That's something you made up to make yourself feel better. And if they are asking you to do that, it's usually because they did it for somebody and now they think you're supposed to do it for them. And as families, we can consider, is that really what we want to do? Do we really want to tell people that I'll stand right next to you and make you strong, even if I can't be the best me anymore? Is that what you would want to teach your children? These are just things to consider, even at the table. Like, how important is it that everybody be able to take care of themselves? When do you feel the strongest? Do you know what I mean? Things that just help you understand, like, where you buckle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that Jack of Hearts, yeah, in the system, it's interesting because it's right in the middle of the, well, in the middle of the
Yeah, it's above the 10 of
spread.
diamonds. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so there's a real central element to that Jack of Hearts, and it's impossible to miss the sort of metaphors related to the story of Jesus and the teachings, and because if you look at the location of the Jack of Hearts and the spread, it makes there's a cross there, and which is so yeah, that energy of the Jack of Hearts, that just real loving and I think in this system, the Jacks often represent initiation to higher levels of being, and with Christ consciousness and the teachings, the true teachings of Jesus. I think it's exactly that loving thy neighbor as you do yourself, and all those.
That's what he said. That was in the episode last night.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
just finishing the last one. And he was like, are you truly saying to the Sanhedrins, like, are you really taking care of your neighbors like they're you and stuff like that, And then one of the women is starting to sense that he's going to pass, and it's someone who loves him dearly. And she went and bought like the most expensive oil she could ever find, this street yard or whatever. I can't remember, some kind of, and she went and anointed his feet. So the fact that this woman is touching his feet at the table, it's like breaking all these rules, but she's saying, you are the true king, and I'm going to rub your feet right now because I know what's about to happen, because I can feel what's about to happen. And I'm not going to let the pomp and circumstance tell me what I should or shouldn't do. I'm going to meet you from the purity of my heart. And Jesus received it like it was the gift that it was. But to others, they couldn't see it as a gift because it was going against what you're supposed to do. I put Rob to sleep. He looks frozen, yeah? Well, I am good for a story for bedtime. So the composite card, when Rob pops back, which hopefully will be soon.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Just there you're back. You were
Sorry
sleeping.
Oh yeah, I was eyes closed. Nice.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, he really thinks what I said is interesting. I feel really good about that.
Yeah.
It's just funny. So the composite card is the Queen of Diamonds. And that's so much about values, right? And that's such an interesting thing, right? The Queen of Diamonds. That's to me, she is the one of values. She is the one of business, but she's also the one who, like, she's a little bit more refined. She's more of a refined kind of person. She or he or that energy, it takes care of its femininity, right? So I kind of see this as like a call that part of what these things coming together about is a strength in all of our femininity.
Yeah.
What comes up for you?
Yeah, the Queen of Diamonds archetype for me, there's something about trusting the process, and the flowers will blossom, the spring will come, like really relaxing into that process, and you know, with all the queens in this system, there is something also about nurturing and allowing oneself to be nurtured, allowing and nurturing others, and you know, that real feminine quality of nurturing and motherhood and things of that nature. Um, yeah.
And that sounds perfect for what we're doing with the parents and the families and where that energy would want to go. So I think that was a good confirmation that we're on the right direction, bringing these systems together. So is there anything else? Because we've kind of come to the window that we wanted to share. Is there more that you want to say about any of the patterns or anything about astrology before we cut out of this one?
I feel pretty complete. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun having these conversations. You never know in which direction it'll all go and all that. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and yeah, enjoyed chatting with you, Groweesha, and I look forward to the next week. We get the whole team back together, and or well, not quite sure if I'll be joining that one, but at some point we'll have the whole team back together. But it's so fun that, you know, to as a central place for these perspectives and sharing and
Yeah.
growing.
We do love to grow. We love to grow. And next week it'll be Donna and Gina who do the show, and they'll come in with a topic as well. And then we'll come back with we'll give you some regular topics. We're going to be more deliberate about what it is that's happening here so it's easier to follow. But if you've listened and you clicked, like, subscribe too, because it'll help it grow, and tell people, because it's just information we want to bring to you in a real reasonable way to help you understand what might be happening as these awarenesses come up in us. And what information, if you had it, might make it easier to digest and let go and accept. Because some things you're not going to change, but you can learn to accept them and make them part of you, and then grow different and not blame someone else, right? Like that little puppy, no one loves me, no one loves me. Yeah. And if you did think no one loved you, like, try to remember that you are loved too. We're all part of that Jack of Hearts, right? We all are of that loving frequency. So be careful what you're saying to yourself. Be careful, because that's under the table stuff too. You know, we want to keep everything on the table at the family card table. And if you're talking smack to you under the table, that's affecting everything on the table too. So I ask you to speak to yourselves as you're valuable and you're important, because it takes a village, it takes a forest. We're all in this together, however you want to say it. You know, your ability to bring the best version of you holds us all up.
Right on.
So that's my wrap up for today. Well, thank you, everybody. Enjoy the listen, and we'll see you soon.
All right. See you next time.